This episode of The Town is presented by 20th Century Studios' Avatar, Fire and Ash. Don't miss the movie critics are raving is epic and exciting and gorgeous and heartbreaking, and stands as one of the greatest films ever made. It's got incredible visuals, jaw-dropping action, and a cinematic achievement. Avatar, Fire and Ash, now playing in theaters, and now nominated for the Academy Awards for Best Visual Effects and Best Costume Design. It is Thursday, February 26th. It's a pretty big statement about Hollywood these days that a show like The Pitt on HBO Max feels kind of revolutionary. It's a procedural medical drama on a platform that made its name avoiding shows like procedural medical dramas. It costs only about $5 million per episode, about half the price of a typical prestige drama. There's 15 episodes per season at a time when many streaming shows are doing 6 or 8 episodes. And here's the biggest shocker. They made The Pitt in Los Angeles, mostly on the Warner Brothers lot in Burbank. That didn't just happen. It's the result of a strategic play by HBO Max and the lead executive producer, John Wells, to bring back the feeling of those prestige broadcast TV dramas of the 80s and 90s. And it worked. The Pitt is not only a major hit, it's one of the few shows on HBO Max that charts on the weekly Nielsen Top 10. It also won the Best Drama Series Emmy last fall. Its second season is now airing, so I thought it was a great time to have John Wells on the show. He's got one of the great TV producing resumes in Hollywood history. ER, The West Wing, Shameless, Southland, Animal Kingdom, list goes on and on. He was also president of the Writers Guild, so I'll ask him about that. And he's worked with so many people in town that he's always one of the most popular guys in the room. That was certainly true when I said hello at the Directors Guild Awards the other night, where, of course, his show won. We're going to talk about the novel/retro business model for The Pitt, how it's influencing the development of other shows. HBO Max is trying to do a cop show now on the similar model. Some of the tax incentive issues in California, how an upcoming episode of The Pitt involving ICE had to be scaled back a bit. Lots more to talk about. So today it's John Wells and how to make a hit show in LA without going broke. From The Ringer and Puck, I'm Matt Belloni, and this is The Town. Okay, we are here with John Wells, writer, director, producer, executive producer of The Pitt, founder of John Wells Productions, former president of the Writers Guild of America. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking back to how I know you, and you were part of one of the most notorious Hollywood Reporter roundtables of all time. Do you remember this?
I do.
It was like 2009, 2010, in the middle of the writer's strike. And Aaron Sorkin, who you worked with many times at West Wing, obviously, we were in the middle of this. And he spouts this line where he said something like, if the writers want to make more money, they should write better.
Yeah,
and we're sitting there, we're like, Aaron, you're sitting with the president of the Writers Guild, and a guy that you have worked with for years. You can't say that to him.
Yeah, it definitely left me out in the cold on that one. Yeah.
I imagine you probably had some words with him after that was all over.
We'd been working together so long that I was not surprised.
Very on brand for him. And I think your response was very even-keeled, very on brand for you.
I was the president of the guild. I needed to have a measured response.
Right, of course. All right, so I wanted you on to talk about The Pitt because there's many issues, business issues that come up with this show that I think, there's been a lot written about it, but I wanted to talk to you specifically about the model for the show, how you guys are trying to, have a template for other shows to follow to keep this kind of old school broadcast style quality show in existence in the streaming age. First of all, I want to know, why was it so difficult? Why is this considered innovative to do 15 episodes on a broadcast style model for a streaming service? Like, why was this a thing?
It's interesting. People talk to me, they'd come up to me and say, how in the world do you do 15 episodes? And I was like, one year I did 66 between 3 different shows, between West Wing, ER, and Third Watch.
Oh my
God. No, it's, I think there are a lot of things. One, the shows themselves and the competition during the streaming wars got bigger and bigger. And they just became, because you were trying to attract a lot of eyeballs, you had a lot of very well-known people who were appearing in these. And literally, when you're doing world building, just the CGI and everything that you have to do to get it back on the air and how expensive they are, it made it more and more difficult to do a lot of episodes. So the conversation we had was, can we do a show that feels like a prestigious streamer show, because we were going to be on HBO Max, that can duplicate the sense of having a lot of story, a lot of episodes, and more importantly, allow the audience to become connected to a show again. I mean, I think one of the things we have lost with the shorter episode shows that don't appear except every couple of years is the connection that the audience has with those characters and the desire to come back and make it part of their lives.
Totally agree with you.
And we used to talk about it as water cooler, but now, of course, it's all social media. People want a show that's their show, that they connect to, that they can find, that they can tell other people about. And then that the next day, after they've watched it, or after the weekend after they've watched it, they can talk with their friends about it, talk about it, exchange social media, tweet about it, do whatever you want to do. I think that's actually an important part of the viewing experience. And we've gotten away from it in the streaming simply because of the size of the shows, how long they take to produce, the streaming, the drop all of the episodes, at once, Netflix model, which makes it very difficult. Again, none of these are particularly original observation for me, but we all have this experience of having watched something and come, that got dropped as a full 6 or 8 episode order and coming in and saying, "Oh, are you watching?" And the other person says, "I'm only on episode 2. I don't want to talk about it."
Or you finish it and you're like, "Wow, that's a great cliffhanger. I can't wait to pick it up in 2.5 years when they get around to making more."
So we were, Warner Brothers approached us about doing some more HBO Max and also David Zaslav, just about, can we do it? And we were like, well, absolutely. I don't know if the audience is primed for it or not, but the advantage of doing this show on HBO is that we can, on HBO Max, is that we can do it realistically, which gave us a new thing to show or to talk about with these medical professionals, actually see what they really go through.
God, Zaslav must just love this show. It's exactly his dream. It wins the awards. Everybody talks about it. It does huge ratings, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg.
There are real efficiencies that people are aware of when you can build a single set and shoot on it. And we shoot 9-day episodes, and we built the set at the beginning of it. It was an expensive set, but having built on it, we shoot on it every single day.
Yes, and we know the whole backstory that it was, the original idea was an ER sequel, and we're not going to get into the lawsuit or any of that stuff. I do want to talk about some of the business issues with the show, because you guys shoot this in LA, and because of that, and because you get a pretty big tax credit for it, some of the financials on the show are public. And, you employ, according to the filings, you employ about 1,000 cast and crew members. You film 135 days in state, and you spent about $65 million for this second season. Is that the entire budget? Is that you get a credit against, or what percentage? 15 episodes cost about how much per episode?
The per episode, this year is a little more than last year, but we were under $6 million per episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's about $75 million for a season, which is pretty darn cheap for the number of episodes that you're getting out of it. And I imagine there are efficiencies that you can use for going season to season.
Yeah, we have a built set. So we're just back shooting on something that we bought last year. So, yeah.
Right. And I'm only, we're only a couple of episodes into season 2, but there's not a lot of outside shots in the show.
It's about one day, one shift. So you're there the whole time with the workers.
But last season you did go to Pittsburgh, right? And shoot a couple of scenes.
Yeah, and we did again this year. We go and shoot sort of the beginning and the end, and then a couple of scenes when people walk outside of the hospital or up onto the helicopter pad. But no, it's almost entirely shot on stage in Los Angeles.
Was that always the plan? I thought you moved it from Pittsburgh in order to get the credit, correct?
No, it was always the plan. And a large part of that was we knew from the beginning, we used each season now, we've used around 250 speaking parts. And so just the economies of being someplace where you have, over 2 seasons, 500 actors that you can hire. If you're in Pittsburgh, or if you're in most places other than New York City, you're going to be flying hundreds of actors in very quickly. So that's one of the real advantages of it. And we get a great crew that's a California crew that wants to be home and is happy to be home. And so all of that works really well.
I know, it's like the old school dream that people have. They don't have to go to Bulgaria to make their their show.
I think we literally had 3 crew members out of the 150 crew members leave after the first season who didn't return in the second.
Who's your lead casting director on the show?
Kathy Sandrich. Yeah,
amazing. casting in the show. Everybody is amazing.
She's like, how many people are there every week? So they've done a fantastic job.
You have to find these extras to sit in the waiting room the entire season.
Yeah, they come in for 7 months. We have a reading library that Noah founded that's just off, just a little library of books. And so underneath most of those blankets are actually books that people are reading. They have a little club, and a few of them have read as many as 12 or 13 books during the 7 months. So,
and these guys literally they sit there because they have to be there in those scenes when they walk by the waiting room, and it's the same people for the entire season.
Yeah, and they're fantastic because they're actually told what it is that they're in for, and they go through props and everything every morning. And then the day is planned out, so they know when they're going to get their meal during the entire time, when they're going to get their X-rays, et cetera, for every single patient. It's really a beautiful thing that the AD staff does.
So you must have people reaching out to you, other producers, saying, "How did you do this, and how can we do this?" And what advice do you say to them? Like, why haven't we seen copycat shows yet that are on this model?
Well, things go slowly. I think there are several that are in various processes of trying to do it, and they will be able to do it. It's in large part, and I want to be really frank about this, the support that we got from HBO Max to do it, once we came in and said, this is what we're planning to do, was tremendous and allowed us to do it. There was not a lot of second guessing what we're up to. The larger the budget, the harder it is to get a full buy-in and creative freedom.
Yeah, this is not that much of a risk. I mean, did you think it was a risk?
Well, you always think that something might not work, but I didn't feel like I was, spending $14-15 million an episode for something. And that is a huge risk.
Well, and it's a proven star in this genre. You've done this show, a version of it before.
As has Scott. And yeah.
Yeah. This is a no-brainer to me. The thing that was surprising to me is that not just that it was a good show that people watched, but that it became an award show. Because you don't typically see procedural type shows get that awards attention. And I know the HBO brand goes a long way in that regard, and it would have been an uphill battle if this was for CBS or Peacock or somewhere else. But the fact that you executed on a level to get the awards attention, I think, was the surprise.
Certainly a surprise to us. I would be lying if I said we weren't surprised. At the same time, I think the community really embraced it, particularly the acting community, because there are all of these wonderful actors who are getting to work on the show. And I think that's a big part of how we ended up getting all that attention, along with the medical professionals who saw it and said they're really doing it, what we do. They're really showing what we do.
Yeah, we were talking before you came on about how one of Craig's family members is a doctor, and it's pretty damn accurate.
It's as best we can.
Yeah, I also think the award stuff is helped by exactly what you said. People want this kind of show to succeed. Severance is a great show and people love it, but it's the streaming style show, auteur driven, drops every 10 episodes or whatever every 3 years, and it's like little movies. Yours is a television show in the old school way. Do you think TV is headed that direction? Do you think we're kind of emerging from the streaming era and kind of regressing a little in the kinds of shows that we're going to embrace?
Well, I would say that I don't think it's necessarily a regression. It's a kind of storytelling that we've done since the beginning of television, and streaming is increasingly becoming, as I think it has to, becoming just replacing broadcast television. There's a reason that the streamers are competing for live sports and live events, and because they're really providing the same go to one place and try and see a lot of different things, have lots of different choices that we had during the cable TV broadcast and cable television system. So I think there's a space for everybody. I think that people want these kind of shows. I think people still want to see good sitcoms that they can laugh at, and then they want to see the additional version of it that happens on streaming.
What's interesting, though, is that when you look at the weekly Nielsen charts and what really performs on streaming service, it's these library shows with 200, 300 episodes, NCIS, Bob's Burgers, West Wing, these shows that have huge libraries that people still get into. And yet, when you look at the originals being produced by most streaming services, it's not that. they're not even trying to create the kinds of shows that could go 100 or 200 episodes. And I've asked people at Netflix why that's the case. And they say, well, we can just license those shows. We don't need to make them because we can license them. And what brings people into the service is new, the fire hose, something you haven't seen yet. And the comfort, the old library stuff is what keeps them and what eats up the hours. But we want the new. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I feel like a new show that can deliver 100, 200 episodes is going to ultimately deliver more value both now and into the future. And if you're making it at Netflix or Amazon or one of the others, and you can own it and control your destiny, then why not take more swings in that arena?
Well, I think you're onto something. I think that's actually where it is headed. And when you look at what's going on right now, where Netflix would like to buy Warner Brothers, they're buying.
Why are they buying Warner?
Why are they buying Warner?
That's the reason.
And for that expertise. But I think you're also going to see many more attempts to keep shows going. And when you look at like what happened, they're doing another season of Ted Lasso. That's extremely important to Apple. They want more of those. I think if they could do 10 seasons of Ted Lasso, they would do 10 seasons of...
Have you heard what Sudeikis is making?
I haven't. I don't really follow.
If there is a situation where there was ever leverage, it's still the number one show on Apple when you turn it on. If they don't have something new, it's always in the top 10. I'm like, at this point, who is subscribed to Apple TV Plus and has not watched Ted Lasso? Or is it just people watching it over and over again? They just want to feel good.
I think that's the case. I mean, we have West Wing and made 167 of them, I think. And I can't tell you how often I run into people who say, I just watched West Wing again because it...
Oh, I did it during COVID. It made me feel very good. And my father-in-law is doing it right now. He's like, oh man, that John Goodman, he's a great addition. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened.
Well, we get all different kinds. We did a show that I was really proud of called Animal Kingdom for TNT that went on to Netflix and did really well this last summer. And people stop me on the street all the time and to say, I love your new show on Netflix. And I think they're talking about Untamed, which we did. And they're all like, no, Animal Kingdom. And I'd say, yeah, well, we made it 11 years ago, but sure. That new show on Netflix.
Bryan Cranston told me that when his Showtime show, Your Honor, went on Netflix. And, it was on Showtime during the pandemic and people, didn't really know what happened. It's a good show. It's on Netflix. People think it's new. I know that's a whole separate topic. And someday, if this deal goes through, maybe all of your shows will just permanently be on Netflix.
Yeah, but I do, to your point, I think what we're going to see is a combination. I think we're going to see, what would be the same thing as the way that the old theatrical distribution system worked, which was you had certain blockbusters that came and drove people into the theaters, and then you had a number of other shows that were ongoing that were important. So I think we're going to see shows that have multiple episodes, that everybody's going to be moving towards that, but not as the only model. It's going to be a combination of things, live sports, event, limited series that come back on that people are connected to every couple of years. You're just not going to be able to do a House of Dragons every year, no matter what you wanted to do. It's not going to happen.
Did you see that NBC is saying that they're bringing back a version of pilot season? It's not quite the same. It's not like when they used to make 100 or whatever, but they are going to try more, which seems smart.
Well, look, it's what HBO Max does. They didn't do it on our show on the Pitt because the set itself to build it was large enough and expensive enough that it didn't make sense. But they make pilots to see if it's working. There's a lot of advantage to it because you get a chance to see what's working and not working. You make adjustments into your writer's room. There are real advantages to it. So I think it got a bit of a bad rap back in the day.
Well, there were too many. I mean, the notion of doing, 20, 30 pilots to pick a couple shows, like that to me doesn't make sense anymore.
And doing it all at the same time and competing for the exact same people.
Exactly. I mean, just thinking back to that, it was nuts. You had these business affairs people staying up all night doing these test deals on 10 different shows that were all shooting at the same time.
Yeah.
Crazy. So that doesn't make sense. But I do think that the era of the straight to series and, without testing stuff out, like you can do that, but you're not going to have the same kind of quality, I don't think. So you're a believer in that.
Well, I'm a believer in it for certain things. I think there are times when it makes a lot of sense to do it. But again, trying to do it in this where you're competing, where you've got 4 actors that everybody wants for 30 shows was insane.
Was Clooney a hot commodity when you were casting ER?
Well, that's complicated. He was somebody who people felt was going to break.
He had done a couple that had failed and kept getting cast. He was like the Kyle Bornheimer.
He's done quite a bit.
Early 90s television. That guy shows up on so many different shows. But you were confident.
Yes, we wanted him for it. He wanted to do it. George was sort of fantastic on the lot, known well on the lot for going around and getting all the scripts before anybody got picked up and deciding and hoping things that he'd want to do. But he said he wanted that part, and he told Les Moonves he wanted that part. He had another thing that he was going to be the lead of that he didn't want to do, and he came in and said, I want to do this. So he was the first person who got cast on the show.
Was Noah Wyle last?
Noah Wyle was dead last. He was
funny.
21, 22-year-old kid who was waiting tables in West Hollywood. So, yeah.
Was it a hard conversation to get him to come back?
It was his idea. He wanted to, like so many people, and it's one of the advantages of doing a show in Los Angeles, he, in the years since we did ER, he hadn't worked in Los Angeles. He'd done a show in Vancouver. He'd done a show in New Orleans. He'd done a show, and he's got a family and, the desire to come back. We ended up doing Shameless in Los Angeles because Bill Macy would do it if he could be in Los Angeles because he had two young girls. So people want to be at home. They want to see their families. We have great crews. And if we can figure out the way financially to make it work for the show, there are tremendous advantages to shooting in Los Angeles.
I know that was the craziest thing when I found out that Shameless was made in LA because you could not tell. How long would you go to Chicago?
We went a couple of different times a year for 2 weeks and got a lot of stuff. But there's also a lot of North Hollywood that the back alleys and the laundromats look a lot like Chicago.
Right. All right. So let's get to the how the tax incentives work on this, because not every production gets what they want, correct? So what percentage of your budget is offset by the California tax credit?
I don't actually know that. I can tell you it's probably 20 some odd % all done. I'd have to go and ask somebody in the accounting office, but It makes a difference. It makes a huge difference for us. And particularly since if we were going to make 15 of them, if HBO was going to commit that up front, everything that we could do to make that more a less of a risk for them at this number was very important.
Was it still more expensive in LA than if you had gone to Pennsylvania?
No, Pennsylvania would be more expensive for some of the reasons that I told you earlier. One is
just flying people in and out,
and the availability of the crew, and particularly for this show. We do a lot of prosthetics, and there's a lot of visual effects and things that we do that would have been very difficult.
Stuff I look away and I can't watch.
Yeah. It's so there's a lot of skilled work that goes into the doing of it.
Yeah. By the way, I heard that I don't think the episode has aired yet, but I heard there is an ICE situation on an episode coming up this season, and that HBO actually asked you guys to tone it down a little. Is that correct?
Well, no, not tone it down a little bit. There is an ICE situation coming up because it's a real issue in emergency rooms. And in fact, there was just recently a New York Times article about it, even though we shot this a couple of months ago. No, they just want to make sure it was balanced. The thing we have to be careful about when we're talking about any of these issues, when we're talking about vaccines, when we're talking about the way in which the healthcare system works, is to make certain that we're actually presenting both points of view, because we're not really in the business of preaching to the choir on the show. There are real issues about immigration, and there are real issues about immigration enforcement within public health system in which you really need people to come in. So that's what we were dealing with. And they just wanted to make sure it was balanced, but they weren't saying don't do this or don't do that. In fact, quite the opposite. We showed them a lot of the research and they were like, yeah, that looks like a good story.
And do you think that was a creative note, or do you think that was a politically minded note? We don't want to ruffle any feathers. This show is getting a lot of attention now.
Yeah, I mean, not that I heard from them specifically, so I couldn't really guess. I can say that all of us are approaching what's going on in this country right now with a certain, trepidation and also awareness that there are some possible risks to telling certain kinds of stories. But nobody, when we first pitched it, I thought, this was right when we were getting ready to shoot it, right when the Netflix, Warner Brothers was, negotiating with Paramount, Netflix, Comcast, whoever.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah. And so I was a little like, I'm going to let them know that we're doing it. I don't want to be in a situation where it's a surprise. And their response was, good story, just make sure it's balanced and we're not just treating the situation as if it doesn't have other points of view.
Interesting.
I actually think that we're trying to appeal to a broad audience. So we know that there are plenty of people in our audience who have a different point of view than our point of view. So what is it that these doctors are going through that's truthful, and the nurses? And if as long as it's truthful, I think that people stick with us.
And the emergency room is a great setting for these kinds of issues because they all come up. It's like the one place where everybody in society mixes, and you don't know who's coming through the door next and what they might believe.
Yeah, and we also are in a world in which people don't feel as comfortable. We have people who feel very comfortable expressing their opinion, but most people are nervous about expressing an opinion because they don't know.
You haven't been on Twitter lately.
What their reaction is going to be one-on-one. On Twitter, you get to do it without actually having to say it to somebody's face.
That's true.
So we try to stay conscious about that.
Do you follow the guild politics as much as you once did? How are you feeling about the upcoming negotiations?
Well, I haven't been on the board or in office for years, so I try and stay informed. But you're a sounding board, I would guess, for people. Like, what are you thinking going in? What is the appetite out there for another strike? I just feel like it would be so devastating. I don't think there's an appetite ever really for a strike, to tell you the truth. That usually gets, every strike is a failed negotiation, right? And it just usually means that people were talking at cross purposes. I think that the specifics now are such that they should be able to really negotiate. But you never know if it's not received well. The health plan, the pension plans, the difficulty people are having with employment, the changes in employment. These are all real issues. The Writers Guild isn't a hiring hall, but they do need to be concerned. We, as members, need to be concerned on how do we best protect the members, because the Guild is really there to provide health and pension. It's there to, protect credits and to make certain that people get paid at certain minimums that are negotiated on.
Well, but the numbers have been scary. The drop in employed writers, the drop in wages. I mean, that with fewer episodes, it's come down, especially since the last strike.
There's no question that, that we were headed into a retrenchment in the entire industry. Everybody sort of knew it. And I think that was part of what led to the strike on both sides, which is fears of what was coming.
Right. But then it almost exacerbated. I mean, I get messages all the time from people like, what did we do? Like, what? And I know it's not, I'm not blaming one side or the other.
That's always the problem, which is, when you're in a situation in which there's a lot of fear about what's coming, and, AI, particularly at that time, but still now is an issue. Both sides can clinch up a bit in the negotiation, and then you end up in these impasses. And at the end of it, you always look at each other with whatever you ended up negotiating for and say, why couldn't we done that on the back of a napkin at the Polo Lounge?
Like in 1956.
Yeah.
Where it's before like Lou Wasserman said, I'll give you my pinky ring if you guys don't strike.
Yeah. I mean, part of that's because the business has changed so substantially. I mean, and the way in which people are employed has changed so substantially. I mean, very difficult.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you very much. Good luck with the rest of the season.
Thank you so much. Nice talking to you.
We're back with the call sheet. Craig, we have now been doing The Town long enough where we have a sequel to a movie that we have previously discussed in a call sheet on The Town. Congratulations.
I know. It's all the horror films. Five Nights at Freddy's, Screams, Megan.
They can churn those out. So we've been doing this show more than 3 years, and we've had a couple of horror sequels. And now we have Scream 7. Scream 6 was the biggest of the Scream movies in its opening weekend. It opened to 44.4 million on its way to 166 worldwide. Not bad. What are we thinking on this one? Because the tracking is at about 43. We're taping this a couple days in advance, but the tracking I've seen has been 43 from NRG. Some of the other services have it higher than that. Why don't we set the line at 45?
I feel like, from a horror perspective, 2026 has been a little slow. Neve Campbell is back in this movie. She was not in Scream 6. It was the only Scream she's not in.
Neve Campbell, Craig, please.
Oh, it's Neve Campbell, not Neve?
It's always been Neve Campbell.
Oh, it's been Neve?
Yeah.
Well, that just goes to show how much I know.
She is a genuine Gen X icon, so please do not disrespect her.
You're right. Hey, we just did Wild Things on the Rewatchable, so I should have gotten that right.
You should have. Yes.
You know what I respect about the Scream movies? I have not seen the recent ones of like this new trilogy reboot, but they're really good at casting young stars. I mean, Scream 5, 6, and 7. Mikey Madison, Jack Quaid, Jenna Ortega. They're really good at casting young up-and-comers in these movies.
Yeah, they were taken over. The franchise started at Dimension, which was a Weinstein company, and then through all the different bankruptcies and all of that nonsense, they were taken over by Spyglass, which is Gary Barber's company. He's I don't want to say notorious. He and I have had some spats in the past. When he ran MGM, he was kind of not a very friendly figure, but he's done well with this franchise. And this one, you mentioned young stars. They famously Gary Barber fired Melissa Barrera off of this movie for some posts that he did not agree with, that he said were anti-Semitic. She claimed they were just pro-peace. They were pro-Palestinian. Probably not going to see a lot of that press in the run-up to this movie. They are not doing a lot of press in the run-up to this movie exactly for that reason. But I think this movie is going to perform. I'm going to take the over on 45.
We should also say this movie is directed by Kevin Williamson for the first time. He's the original writer of Scream. He has not directed any of the movies. So this is his directorial debut for Scream. And I think it's only the second movie he's ever directed.
Yeah, he was a big deal in the 90s. He created Dawson's Creek, which gave us James Van Der Beek. And he is I
Know What You Did Last Summer. He wrote that.
Yep. He was a very big deal. And it's interesting. I think for the old school fans, they will appreciate him coming back for this one. Are you taking the over?
These movies just feel very reliable to me. So yes, I will.
Okay. Yeah. Well, but this would be a slight improvement over the last one. But I'm going to take it. I think that we'll get about 45, probably a little more. All right. That's the show for today. I want to thank my guest, John Wells, producer Craig Horlbeck, our editors, Jessie, Lopez, and John Jones. And I want to thank you. We'll see you next week.